Well, welcome to our panel or our talk, Why Oppose Matters. Yeah, we're here to just kind of talk about representation in games through talking about some game called Overwatch. You might have heard of it. I don't know.
Maybe.
I'm Dannielle del Rosario. I go by she, her, they, them pronouns. I'm a co-founding member of Different Games Collective, but otherwise, for my day job, I do front-end software development for Big Nerd Ranch here in Atlanta.
Cool. And I'm Sarah Shoemann. You can go by she, her, they, them for my pronouns. I'm a PhD student in digital media at Georgia Tech. I generally study sort of the social dimensions of urban DIY and indie game communities.
Different Games Collective is a grassroots collective based in New York City and Atlanta. We do events and resources to support marginalized voices in DIY and independent games.
Here in Atlanta, we offer monthly programming in collaboration with Karis, Books and More, which is Atlanta's only feminist bookstore. And so the event series there is called Dear Games. So you can look up Dear Games if you're interested in coming to some local events. A primer for folks who might not be familiar, Overwatch is Blizzard's fourth major franchise, and it's modeled after the popular team-based first-person shooter Team Fortress 2 and similar games. And Blizzard developers opted for a hero-based shooter with kind of fun player characters and that emphasize teamwork. So why is the game so popular? I would say, and I think a lot of what we've seen has indicated that the game appeals to a really diverse audience. So due to its sort of poppy aesthetics and its emphasis on teamwork, lots of options for playable characters. And the game features an accessible style of gameplay. It's easy to play, but difficult to master, that makes it friendly to gamers of different ages and skill levels. More specifically, though, its customizable controls have been applauded by differently abled gamers. Recently, Reddit username Zach552, an Overwatch fan with cerebral palsy, thanked Blizzard for offering an array of customizable controls. Because of your extensive options, Zach said, I'm able to play every character in the roster and it feels great. Because of you, I made my first snipe in a video game today. The extremely diverse cast of playable characters or heroes available to players also adds to the game's appeal for a wide variety of players. In particular, the game's been praised for offering tons of options for playable women characters. As you can see an array of some of them here. There's a lot of variation between the kinds of representations of women in the game. Like in most games, there are tons of sexy, hyper-feminine, yet deadly characters to choose from, like Widowmaker, as seen here. But there's also more diverse expressions of gender among the player characters. Women characters have diverse body types, so in addition to being, these curvy vixen characters, some are really physically strong and imposing, like Zarya. Others are fun and playful and sprightly, like Tracer, as you can see here.
Which brings me to our main character of today's presentation, Tracer. Well, she's quirky, she's fun, idealistic. Her backstory around her, spoilers, involves her becoming unsynchronized with time. So what's the problem? Well, during open beta testing, there was a victory pose that featured Tracer in this suggestive and sexualized pose. There was a person who goes by the username Phipps who said, what about this pose has anything to do with the character you're building in Tracer? It's not fun. It's not silly. It has nothing to do with being a fast elite killer. It just reduces Tracer to another bland female sex symbol. How did Blizzard react? Actually, they removed the pose after their beta. Why? Jeffrey Kaplan, the game director for Overwatch, cites both player feedback and as a creative decision made to strengthen the quality of the game. Our goal isn't to water down or homogenize the world or the diverse cast of heroes we've built within it. We have poured so much of our heart and souls into this game that it would be a travesty for us to do so. A lot of people said, is this censorship? Questioning, is this an infringement to the art directors, to the game developers? And a lot of people kind of agreed. Yes, this was against the character of Tracer. And a lot of people just said, but the important question is, what does this mean for what Tracer represents to gamers?
Ultimately, the response from Blizzard to the fan critique of the Tracer butt pose debacle shows that game makers are becoming more sensitive to the varied ways that players identify with and through their favorite game characters. Given that Blizzard did incorporate feedback about the portrayal of Tracer so well, it might be more important to look at the way other forms of representation in the game are less thoughtfully handled. So we're actually going to kind of pivot away from talking about Tracer.
Perhaps race is a more worthy critique in Overwatch. So let's talk about race in games. There are so many examples in video games that border between caricature to just plain offensive or alienating or oversimplifying of cultures and characters of color. In general, Overwatch is incredibly colorful and incredible. Like, it has South Korean characters, Chinese characters, Swedish, French characters, and despite what Twitter tells you, Reaper is Latino. So, it's just a little disturbing. Some small details, right? Farah, the Egyptian character, has alternate costumes for what seems to be Pacific Northwest Native American outfit, and it kind of feels like, let's just lump the two brown races together or something like that. Farah's Native American outfit, called Rain Dancer, is made up of exaggerated symbols, pulling from totem poles, onto the wings, if you can't see that. And just a thought experiment. The American equivalent of this would be saying, like, oh, America's full of skyscrapers and tractors and cars. Let's make a character whose arms are made of skyscrapers, or a French character whose arms are made of baguettes. Like, it's oversimplifying, right?
When we look kind of summarily at the role of diversity in video games and the way that it's sort of being handled in Overwatch, you know, there are these problematic aspects of it in these ways that it's not being handled in sort of a nuanced way, and that there are these kind of problematic stereotypes. But we do think that the conversations that have happened around Tracer's butt fiasco, if you will, and all these other forms of representation, you know, it might be seen as a net positive.
Overwatch is providing a faithful portrayal of a diverse cast, and in order to create and welcome a more diverse audience. And that's great. That's excellent. So keep doing it. Keep, always praise a developer that takes in player feedback, that pays attention to representation in games. And,
yeah, keep doing what you're doing, but do it more and better. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.